by Gemini, and it only took us 27 episodes, but hey, we're finally playing a game with my name in it! Except it has nothing to do with me at all, really. 始めましょうか。Gemini Rue is a sci-fi point-and-click adventure game which started life as a student project by one Joshua Nernberger. After getting positive feedback, he later teamed up with Wad Jedi Games, who also developed the Blackwell point-and-click adventure titles, to release the game commercially in 2011. The game has a very noir feel to it, which comes across brilliantly in the game's visuals, with the hand-drawn backgrounds and the character sprites having dull, dark color schemes. Even the inventory items, every single one of them, are gray, with very little coloring elsewhere. Gemini Rue tells the story of two protagonists, each of whom you control at different points in the game. The first is Azriel Odin, a former assassin for the Boryokudan, the local mafia, who now works with the police and is searching for his missing brother Daniel. When controlling Azriel, you have access to a communicator, which you can use to contact your partner Kane for help, or anyone whose phone number you have obtained. It also keeps important notes during your investigation, and can be used to interface with terminals around town. The second protagonist is Delta 6, also known as Charlie, an inmate at a mysterious facility known as Center 7, where inmates are rehabilitated by having their memory wiped and being retrained in various skills. At the very beginning of the game, Delta 6 is having his memory wiped as punishment for an apparent escape attempt. Now, despite not knowing why he was escaping, people claiming to know him tell him he must continue his escape plans and avoid completing his training, as this will allow him to be released from the facility, but only after another memory wipe. Speaking of training, it's in the early sections of Delta 6's portions of the game that you're given very cleverly integrated tutorials on the game's shooting mechanic. That's right, this isn't just a point-and-click adventure. There's actually a bit of combat as well, but we'll get into that more later. Obviously, there's some connection between the stories of Azriel and Delta 6 besides the one serving as a tutorial for the other, but for now I want to try and avoid spoiling anything as much as I can. What I will mention, however, is that until that connection is made, the game allows you to switch control between the two protagonists at any point by clicking their portrait in the upper right corner. The game has a very simple interface when it comes to doing the actual pointing and clicking. Simply right-click on an object you wish to interact with to bring up a menu which allows you to look at the object, use it, talk to it, interact using your foot, which generally means kicking it, or use an inventory item on it. Speaking of inventory, this is probably just a nitpick on my part, but I find it odd and maybe even a tiny bit inconvenient that the only way to check your inventory in this game is to right-click an interactive object. There's no actual inventory button. In Gemini Rue, while you may be the only one pointing and clicking, the protagonists aren't the only ones doing the interacting. At some points during each story, you can control a second character, which is necessary for certain puzzles. Just right-click that character, click Use, then click what you want them to interact with. It's simple, and it's a neat concept which gives some variety to the gameplay, as does the aforementioned combat. Both Azriel and Delta 6 have short sections in their stories which involve gunplay. In these sections, you automatically duck behind cover. Depending on where your cover is, you can either lean out and aim by pressing the D key and return to cover using the A key, or lean and aim to the left with A, to the right with D, and return using S. The spacebar fires, but only when out of cover. The R key reloads, but only when in cover. And if you have multiple targets, the W key switches between them whether you're in cover or not. Just firing by itself may or may not hit, so you can try for a headshot, which greatly increases your chance of hitting by taking a deep breath with the left control key. This sends a marker up a meter, starting in a red zone, then in a green zone for a short time. Firing while in this zone performs the headshot, but you can only take a deep breath while out of cover, which leaves you open while waiting for the marker to hit the green area. Again, I find the gun sections to be a welcome change-up to the gameplay, and it would probably be a great concept if it were executed better. For much of the gun sections, though, the controls were slow or downright unresponsive, resulting in my character being hit when he didn't need to be. Also, sometimes when performing the deep breath, the enemy I'm shooting would not be killed, if he was even hit at all, which is why I said this maneuver greatly increases the chance of a hit, even though the game calls it a guaranteed kill. Most of the characters are well made, with a scant few of them being unenjoyable. In particular, Kane, Asriel's partner, just seemed to do nothing but complain throughout the whole game.
Now what does he want? Asriel, do you really want to go back there just after we escaped?
Giselle comes off as bossy and impatient, however, I can understand her position, so at least in the early part of the game I can look past that. Another feature of the game I like is the ability to play with developer commentary. Clicking this starts a new game, throughout which you'll see numerous tape reel icons. Clicking one of these icons will play either a bit of commentary for the current scene from creator Joshua Nernberger, or a blooper from one of the actors.
I'm a cop, not a burglar. Not anymore, at least. You're right. Yeah. Parmesan.
Now, my final criticism for this game, and by extension, where this goes on there, involves the game's ending. Which means, even though I don't normally do it in these reviews, I'm going to have to explain the story in greater detail, which of course means spoilers. So, if you're thinking about getting this game, and you don't want any part of the story spoiled, click here to skip to my final verdict. Or, if maybe you've already made up your mind by this point, you can stop watching the video altogether if you want. Hey, go check out my McPixel video. That was a hell of a lot of fun to play and make. Anyway, I'll give you a chance to make up your mind. You're still here, so I'm assuming that means you're prepared for the full story and the spoilers. If not, don't say I didn't warn you. I mentioned there was a connection between Asriel and Delta 6. To be more specific, Asriel and Delta 6 are one and the same. Asriel's portion of the story actually takes place 1 year after that of Delta 6. Delta 6's previous escape attempt from Center 7, the one resulting in the memory wipe at the beginning of the game, was meant to complete a map for Giselle, who was also planning to escape. Initially, she was planning on escaping alone, but after telling her about his gun training, she allows him to join her, along with another inmate named Epsilon 5, who is skilled at computer use. A fourth inmate, named Balder, tries to stop Delta 6 and kill him in retaliation for some humiliation the latter inflicted on the former, but Delta 6 incapacitates Balder, and while the escape goes on as planned, only Epsilon 5 manages to actually escape, as Giselle is killed and Delta 6 is shot and wounded, and later given another partial memory wipe and released as the facility originally intended, in his new role as Boryo-Kudan assassin Asriel Odin. 1 year later, Asriel is searching for his missing brother Daniel. A contact of Asriel's named Matthias tells him that Daniel was captured and taken to Center 7. Asriel goes to the local branch of the Boryo-Kudan, who have no idea who he is, for information on how to get to Center 7. They agree to tell him if he can find a lost shipment of a narcotic known as juice, as without it they have no income. He locates the juice, in the process reuniting with Epsilon 5, now going by the name Sayuri, although neither one is aware of the other's identity, due not only to Asriel's memory wipe, but his new face, given to him by Center 7 as part of the process of entering his new role. Upon learning of Asriel's quest, Sayuri insists on tagging along, as she still thinks the person she knew as Delta 6 is still there, and wants to try to rescue him. The pair later learn the coordinates of Center 7, so along with Kane and Matthias, they travel to the nebula that houses the facility, and Asriel and Sayuri infiltrate it. While looking for information on the people they're there for, they encounter the director of Center 7, who explains that Asriel's brother Daniel does not exist. The director goes on to say that inmates who are rehabilitated and released in new roles are also implanted with fake memories of something precious to them, which might be located at Center 7. These memories are triggered as a form of recall if the person fails somehow in their new role, and Daniel was one such memory. Azrael's contact, Matthias, turns out to be Balder, who survived his previous encounter with Azrael/Delta 6, and is now used by the facility as a double to facilitate a false memory if needed. He captures Cain while Sayuri is also imprisoned, and Azrael is taken for yet another memory wipe.
Sheesh, how does this guy have any brains left? Anyway, now we're starting to get towards the ending, so hang on for just a bit longer.
Sayuri and Cain escape and free Azrael, but not before he had his memories partially wiped. Sayuri says they can get to the director's office to recover not only his memories, but her memories of life before she was Epsilon 5. The director's office, however, is on lockdown, and will only open in an emergency situation. So she reluctantly rejoins Cain and Azrael, who are waiting outside the dock where Cain's ship is being kept. Before they can enter the dock, however, their escape is detected, and the dock is cut off from them, with the door again being unopenable in a non-emergency situation. Sayuri leaves and sets the reactor of the facility on overload, which opens every door in the facility. Upon realizing this includes the director's office, she gains renewed hope at regaining her and Azrael's memories and sets off again for the director's office, with Azrael taking off after her and Cain prepping the ship for launch. Along the way, Azrael once again encounters Balder, but kills him this time. He also kills the director, but not before the director shoots Sayuri.
And now we come to my major criticism of this game, the actual ending.
To be more specific, you can make one of two final choices here in the director's office. You can either check on Sayuri or go to the computer and try to get the memories back. If you go to Sayuri first, she'll tell you she's fine and you both return to the ship and escape the facility before it explodes. Don't worry, all the other inmates escape as well. Cain bemoans the fact that the person that was once Azrael is now someone he no longer knows and might as well be dead, but Sayuri states that memories aren't the only thing that make a person. The second ending is more or less the same, but with a minor difference, and is considered by some to be the better ending, yet it's this one I actually have a problem with. If you go to the computer and attempt to recover your memories instead of checking on Sayuri, she'll stop you and say she doesn't want to know who she was after all, and you don't really need to know either, at which point the game ends the same as before.
Okay. I get the ending. I understand there's a message there that memories aren't the only thing that makes a person. There's their conscience, there's other things. I understand that. I get that. But really, you're telling me Sayuri sets the reactor on overload, gets herself shot, nearly gets Azrael killed by Matthias in an attempt to get Azrael's and her memories back, and then when Azrael attempts to do just that, Sayuri stops him and says, you know what, I don't want him anymore. I don't want it. It's fine. What? So she basically gets shot, and you have to go through a final boss fight for nothing. That is a terrible way to end a game, especially one that had such promise. Which leaves me with the problem of where to put this. For the most part, the gameplay is fun up to the end. I mean, yeah, sure, there's some flaws that I mentioned, like the gunplay and the dry voice acting in parts of the game that kind of take away from that, but it's fun for the most part. Really, it's just that ending that I've got a major problem with. So, all in all, I probably have to say, my final opinion on Gemini Rue, it's worth a look. The premise is excellent, the gameplay is good, but both could stand to be executed a little better.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you're still in a pointy and clicky mood, then you're in luck. You can check out my video on an excellent point-and-click mystery called Contradiction. And there's also the video I did of an older game called The Last Express. Just so you know, however, that was my very first episode, so if you click it, be prepared for a lot of roughness. And don't forget to check out my other show, Work in Progress. Like and share this video if you liked it and, indeed, want to share it. And subscribe to keep up to date on new videos. 次回まで。さよなら。